Hey, it's Sparky, Fifer, 1250 a.m. The Fan. And check me out weekday afternoon, 2 to 5 on Wisconsin Sports Daily on 1250 a.m. The Fan. Follow me on Twitter at Sparky Radio. He is Nathan Marzion. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. He's a little giddy tonight because he just got done watching the Celtics game. We'll get more to that coming up here in a little bit. But first, we'll start off with a guy that may or may not be a Milwaukee Buck next year when his suspension starts. And that is Patrick Beverley, who threw multiple basketballs into the front row stands in Indianapolis, as well as X'd out a ESPN producer after the game and caught flack for that. And the ever tough NBA decided for throwing basketballs into the stands at people and X'ing out a producer deserves a 4-game suspension, a harsh penalty served on by the NBA for throwing basketballs into the stands. I didn't think he was going to get suspended at all, Nathan. I thought they'd just be like, good job. Take out a couple fans. It's all good. Don't worry about it. I'm being sarcastic, of course. It's a complete crap show right now with Joe Dumars. $100,000 for Jamal Murray for throwing things on the floor multiple times. That was a joke. And a 4-game suspension is even a bigger joke. But at least you had the warning sign coming about how soft it was going to be considering what they did to Jamal Murray. Your thoughts, Nathan Marzion?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't surprising, and this is definitely deserved. You know, he lost his cool. He was out of line. He just had a moment where the competitiveness, the anger, the frustration, everything boiled over, got the best of him. And he's a fiery guy. He's someone that, I talked about this. This was the podcast I did, we did right after the game, it was the next day. And I said, he's a guy that, this is what makes him great, is his passion, his intensity, and his fire. But it's also something that can be his downfall sometimes when it gets the best of him in these type of moments. We've seen him have technicals, and when he's losing and about to lose a game, and he'll shove a guy or he'll get into a fight or whatever, because it's in his psyche to he's just always intense and always fired up. So when he loses, it hurts. And the reporter stuff was obviously inexcusable, and I'm glad he's apologized for that, and called the girl to apologize, or the lady to apologize. And so it's unfortunate that he did that. It's definitely something he's got to work on controlling, his emotions in the moment, and his just being a better loser. But it's something that you kind of just gotta take your suspension, move on, accept it as a acceptable punishment, and something that like I said, he deserves. And I'm sure he'd say the same thing, that he deserves this type of suspension. So, I mean, comparing it to the Jamal Murray thing, it's interesting because you're like, well, one of them, okay, yeah, you're throwing the basketball in endangering a fan potentially. And this other one, you're throwing stuff on the court and endangering players, and you get no games. I'm not surprised by it. Again, I didn't think they were going to suspend Jamal Murray, but when you actually look at the two things, they're pretty similar in that they both are, endangering someone else by throwing something at them. And Jamal Murray did it twice, actually.
So did Beverly.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying Jamal Murray threw two separate things on the court. So yeah, it's just, but I mean, in the playoffs, when your team's still in it and they're trying to keep your team in the race and keep the ratings up and keep people interested, I'm not surprised they didn't suspend Jamal Murray. And it's the fact that he's Jamal Murray and Patrick Beverley's Patrick Beverley, is also that, where one of them has a lot more status than the other. Not saying that it's right that Jamal Murray doesn't get a suspension, but again, it makes sense. I understand why it happens the way it happens. So yeah,
I think the NBA is a complete joke. Beverly should have got 40 games, at least a half a season for that. At least a half a season. There's no question. Because now think about it. Think about it for a second. You're in the front row at a game, right? You're a Bucks fan. You spend maybe you didn't spend your money, but somebody has the tickets. You're in the front row of the Bucks game. You start jawing at Jason Tatum or whoever may be, Porzingis, and you're running your mouth and you're getting real aggressive, getting into the personal business, whatever else, trying to get underneath their skin. Now this dude is sitting here. They had Bev only got 4 games. That was in the playoffs. And he got 4 games, and that included what he did to the reporter. So he got 4 games for, maybe he got a game for each ball he threw into the stands, and then 2 for what he ended up doing with the reporter. Who knows? Either way, that's not very much. It's December. I don't care if I get 4 games off of this. Give me a basketball. Somebody give me a basketball. I'll peg this dude right in the head. Now, see, that is what this is going to do. You are opening up a whole can of worms because you doing that does not stop anybody from taking out a fan now that wants to run their mouth with a basketball. Now, the fan himself or herself, in my opinion, should lose their tickets forever, never be allowed into that arena again. And if you're in seats that are owned by somebody else, they lose those tickets regardless if they were there or not. There should be harsher penalties for them too. So it's not just the player. That is ridiculous. There is no way he should have only gotten 4 games for that damn thing. That's like going up into the stands. Well, he's a nice guy. So, I mean, we're not going to suspend him for the whole year. Ron Artest never should have been allowed back into the NBA again after that. And they allowed him back in to come back and play again after he went up into the stands. You have got to have harsher penalties. And I realized there was nothing black or white written down in the NBA rule book for throwing something at fans because nobody was stupid enough to ever do it. This idiot does it, and he gets 4 games? Ridiculous. The Jamal Murray thing, that's just as bad. Now, I understand that's your own guy. So you're hurting, one millionaire hurting another millionaire. Fine. You want to throw stuff out on the court again? Nobody's been dumb enough to pull this crap either. So again, nothing's been written down prior to what the rules should be. That should have been, you're gone for the series. You get to the next series, you can play again. You're done. You're hurt anyhow, but you're done. You're not playing the rest of the series. And instead, Joe Dumars and Adam Silver, I swear to you, I don't know what is going on there. Somebody bring me Adam Silver and have him explain to me how throwing multiple basketball balls at people that paid for their tickets and getting suspended 4 games, how that's a good look for the NBA. Somebody bring him to me and let him explain to me how having a player possibly take out Rudy Gobert by throwing a heating pad and a towel on the floor is a good idea. Now, how about this, Marzion? What if Gobert would have slipped on that heating pad or that towel, went down, messed up his knee? Do you think he gets $100,000 or do you think it's worse?
Probably worse.
Of course it was. But nobody got hurt, so we'll just fine him and let him see if he does it again. If I'm the Boston Celtics and I'm in a tight game and I got some clown on the bench that doesn't mean anything to me, here, go ahead, throw something here at the end of a game. See what happens. Why not? You're not going to get suspended or anything like that. You get fined. Don't worry about it. Tatum will pay your fine for you. Go right ahead. Let's do it. It's horrible. And if you think it's not a copycat league, that these guys don't see what Murray got and don't think, dude, that's totally worth doing to screw up somebody at the end of a game, I'm totally going to try it. It's going to happen again. And then that basketball thing, there had to have been a penalty to make sure no other NBA player ever would have considered doing such a dumb thing, ever. And that completely did not happen. So again, regardless if he's here or not, I think it's bogus. Both those things are bogus for me for the NBA office.
I think the Beverly thing could have been like, to me, the max would have been like 10 games. I think that would have been like, that would be realistic to me. Where like if he would have gotten 10, I wouldn't have been like, oh, that's crazy. But I would.
Well, let me interject. So he got 4 games, and the way the NBA put it, it was for both actions, throwing the balls and for how he treated that ESPN producer, right? So of the 4 games, how much of that do you think had to do with the ESPN producer?
At least like 3. It was at least 75% of it. I mean, I don't think they typically suspend people for what they say to a reporter. They usually, it's like you might get fined, but they very rarely do guys get suspended for, disrespecting a reporter. I mean, Giannis has walked off on reporters before, after a loss, and he hasn't gotten suspended. Like, I don't think a lot of it was that. I think they throw that in there as like, we're going to just do this to make it sound like we care about that.
I agree.
It was mainly about the basketballs being thrown. And I mean, I agree with that. Because again, one of them is like, you're endangering people. The other one is like, okay, you're being a little disrespectful, but people do that. People are like that all the time. You can find plenty of interviews where guys were disrespectful or guys were snappy or guys were whatever after a loss. But again, I could have seen this being a little bit harsher, but I didn't expect it to be anything crazy.
Yeah, I'm totally fed up and pissed off by those guys in the NBA league office. It's ridiculous. Oh, okay, so let's move on to topic number 2. I'll take a quick timeout because we're due for a timeout. Quick timeout. Come back. We'll talk about the Celtics getting embarrassed in game 2 against the Cavaliers. That's what I think had Nathan a little giddy before we started this whole thing. But then I led with Beverly and kind of ruined the moment for him. And I apologize. I'll take a break and be happy again. Back after this on Green and Growing, downloaded on your Odyssey app, or if you download your favorite podcast at It Is Green and Growing. Steve Sparky Fifer and Nathan Marzion. Welcome back, Green and Growing. Steve Sparky Fifer, 1250 a.m. The Fan, Wisconsin Sports Daily, weekday afternoons from 2 until 5 p.m. You can listen on your Odyssey app if you're not in the southeastern Milwaukee area to listen on 1250 on your radio dial. He is Nathan Marzion. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. And time to talk about the playoffs. We'll get to Knicks and Pacers. But before we started this podcast here on Thursday night, the Boston Celtics had a thud in the playoffs as they get beat by the Cleveland Cavaliers. I told you before, I do some fill-in work on 92.9 ESPN in Memphis, Nathan, right? So I filled in earlier today, and I'm filling in again tomorrow. And we record the shows, and then they play back essentially the same time I'm on the air in Milwaukee. And we were talking about this game. We were both, my producer Connor and I both were like, wow, Boston's going to kill them like this. This isn't a series. I mean, come on, let's be serious. So that happens. He texted me and said, Boston is 15-15 at home in the playoffs since 2021. 500 at home. And this is the team that we're proclaiming as the team in the NBA, that team that everybody's picking to win this thing. Everybody's picking to be in the NBA finals, and they're 500 at home in the playoffs like that. That is not good. There is nothing good about that at all. Also not good was how crappy they shot the basketball tonight, Nathan.
Yeah, no, this has been going on for several playoff runs in a row where they just, for whatever reason, they're not great at home. Like you said, it usually is splitting games at home where they'd split the first two, or maybe they'd lose a game 5 randomly. Like we beat them in game 5 in 2022 on the road. We won in game 1 on the road there. So we went 2-2 in our home games against them, or our road games against them in the 2022 playoffs. And, last year losing game 7 at home and losing the first 2 at home to the Heat in the conference finals. So yeah, they've never, for as good as they've been in the regular season at home and been so dominant, they've never been able to, I think they lost 3 home games all year, and they've already now lost 2 in the playoffs, which is just crazy to me. Like they were, I believe it was 38-3 at home in the play or in the regular season this year. Now they're 2-2 or 4. What would it be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're 3-2 in the playoff at home in the playoffs already. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. And as you said, the shooting, they've all season, and for the last couple seasons they've been this way too. They just feel like, and I hate them, so I am obviously biased.
I hate them.
They are my least favorite team. They're arguably my least favorite sports team. It's between them and the Badgers, but they are, I can't stand them. I always root against them. As good as they are, it's pretty easy to find reasons why you're like, it's hard to believe in this team completely come playoff time. And the reasons are, number one, they rely too much on the 3-point shot. They have every season for the last 3 seasons, and that's what the Bucks used to do under Bud. They would just chuck threes. Didn't have a great game plan outside of that. Didn't have a ton of rim pressure. Now the Bucks had more rim pressure because they had Giannis, but nobody else could get to the rim. Nobody else could generate consistent offense, really. And so when shooters went cold, it was like, what do we do? And that kind of feels like what the Celtics go through. And every time they lose a game, even in the regular season, you'd look and you're like, yeah, it's because they missed their threes. And if they hit their threes, they're blowing teams out by 30. And they're a very high floor or very high ceiling, very low floor team because of their, play style and how they just chuck threes. So that's something that has all season been like, okay, it's hard to trust them because will they be able to shoot well consistently throughout the playoffs? When defenses tighten up, when everything gets a little bit, there's more pressure, all that stuff. You've got a couple guys on that team, one in particular that maybe might not shoot as good in the playoffs as he does in the regular season.
Talk about him for a second. Drew Holiday,
Look, I don't
35
want to hate on him. I don't want to hate
2
on
of
him, but I
7,
have to. I
0
have to
of
hate
2
on it a
from
little.
3, 2 boards, 3 assists, 4 freaking points. And you people wanted him over Damian Lillard. You people wanted him over Damian Lillard. Y'all ought to be
Shame.
ashamed of your damn selves.
Shame
Ashamed.
on you.
Ashamed.
He's now averaging I think it's under now 8 points a game in the playoffs. It might be 8. I think it's 8 points a game in the playoffs. He's shooting 36% from the floor. He's playing a different role. He's not expected to put up 20. But
you got blown out. This was your time to shine, Drew. Go get you some. Go do something. Nothing.
No, I'm just saying. I'm not gonna put him at a he's the number 2 scorer type of standard. But at the same time, 8 points a game on 36% shooting, no matter what option you are, is terrible. And when you're a fifth option, you should be more efficient. It should be something that, and I went into this playoffs expecting, okay, I don't think he's going to have the same efficiency struggles as he did with the Bucks because he's in a different, situation. He's now the fifth or fourth option where he's just kind of getting open looks all the time and he's not shooting as much. And I think his efficiency will be fine. So far in the playoffs, it has not been fine through 7 games. So yeah, it's again, I don't want to hate on the guy. I love Drew Holiday. We will always love Drew Holiday. Every Bucks fan
This
will.
isn't about Drew Holiday. This is
It's
about
not.
all these Bucks fans that are screaming and yelling about Holiday over Lillard and how the Bucks made a mistake. It's about them. It ain't about Drew.
Exactly. It is not about we're not trying to hate on Drew, but we're trying to show people this is why you made the trade. This is them making that trade was not a mistake. Having Drew Holiday on this team was not saving this team. It might have given them somewhat more regular season consistency and success, but it was not winning them a title. And it's something that I think same with Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen had a great regular season, gets to the playoffs. I know he got hurt, but the first few games he played in was terrible. And it's okay, people, stop making assumptions about and judgments about trades through in January. It's about what they do when it matters. And we traded those 2 guys because they didn't come through when it mattered most of the time. And Dame is a guy that will. And we saw it with Dame in the playoffs when he was playing. He averaged 31. And you're complaining about us getting a guy or giving up a guy that averaged 8 in the playoffs and another guy who averaged 5. The playoffs are a whole different beast. I judge these guys on how they play in the playoffs. And, it's just, again, it's something that I think hopefully the people that have said that all year are watching this and saying, oh, yeah, that's why we traded Drew Holiday. That's why this trade made sense. And that's why I will never, ever, 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 no matter what happens, if the Bucks never win another title, never will I look back and say, why did the Bucks make that trade? Or the Bucks shouldn't have made that trade. I will never do that because it was 100% the right move. And it always is going to be, no matter what happens. You make that trade 101 times out of 100. Every GM in the league makes that trade 101 times out of 100. And I am, happy going forward with Damian Lillard as my point guard and knowing that they have the ceiling to win another title with that type of scoring.
You have no Porzingis. Now, he is not Giannis. To be clear, he is not Giannis that you're missing. It's Porzingis. So it's Tatum, it's Brown, and then it's Porzingis. So it'd be like the Bucks missing Middleton, let's say. Okay? Is that fair? Would you agree with that at this point?
Yes, it's hard because they're so different in terms of they have the top 5 that's pretty evenly spread out across the 5. We have the really good top 2/3, and then it kind of falls off pretty quick.
Sure.
So it's yes, it's like them. It's like us losing Middleton, but they also don't have Giannis Dame. They have Tatum Brown, which isn't as good.
Agreed. Okay. But my point is this. So Porzingis is out. The great Al Horford. Give me a break. 2 rebounds in 29 minutes. Dog, no Porzingis. You got to rebound the basketball. It's your job, old man. Go do something. Go be a tough guy like you are against the Bucks. Do something. Show up for once when it's not playing against Milwaukee. You didn't do jack crap, did you, Al? Not a damn thing. And if Porzingis doesn't play in this series and you continue to get out rebounded 44-31, I don't care what you shoot. That's going to be a problem. If you get out rebounded by 13 to 15 boards every game, if Cleveland owns you like that, it's over. And don't come at me with, well, they got Luke Cornett. Stop. They don't got a prayer if Al Horford doesn't play better than that and get more boards.
Yeah, and all season, that was something, too, that I was like, they are relying a lot on Porzingis's health to really make a finals run here because not that they can't do it without him, but
No, they're not doing it without him. Say it. They're not doing it without Porzingis. They are
well,
not doing it without Porzingis.
they're not winning the title. They could
Correct.
get past Cleveland and maybe like the Knicks if the Knicks are banged up without him, but they're not winning. They're not going all the way if he's out the rest of the playoffs.
Correct.
And that's something that, like, because he's been vital to them. He's been a big part of what they do. His post up game has unlocked a lot of things for them. Him defensively, as their main big. When he's out, it changes things a ton. I think when they're starting five, with Porzingis in there, is like the second best starting five in the league, and I think the Bucks were number one technically by net rating. And when he's out, and it's Horford in there, that lineup is like middle of the pack, like 49th percentile. They went from like 98th percentile to 49th percentile when you just take out, swap those swap those two players. And so I right away was like, this could get a little interesting. And it right now is interesting, being 1-1, going back to Cleveland, like not having him makes things tough. You're relying on, now an old guy in Al Horford who you don't have much backup behind him. You've got Xavier Tillman, you've got Luke Cornett, not guys that you can really rely on. And so it can get a little dicey. And again, now their 3-point shooting, I think, is even more of a factor, and more like they're going to rely on it even more because you don't have that post up game with Porzingis, and you're probably going to get out rebounded sometimes. And you're just going to be like, we need to hit our threes to keep us alive, not alive in these games, but to keep us ahead in these games. And so it'll get interesting. And I was saying that the things that I give me a little bit of doubt about the Celtics and that it's hard for me to completely trust them. I said, the relying on the 3-point shooting. Obviously, we know Drew struggles in the playoffs. They don't have like the bona fide superstar player. I know Tatum's really good and he's borderline superstar, but he's not Giannis, Jokic, Luka type of player. Like he's just not on that step. So that makes it a little hard to trust when you go into some of these series and you're like, not necessarily this one, but like some of them, if they play the Knicks, you're like, is Tatum the best player in this series? Probably not. You play, if they played the Bucks, he's definitely not the best player in that series. They play either Minnesota, OKC, Denver in the finals. He's not the best player, or Mavs in the finals, whoever they play in the West. Like he's not the best player in that series. So that not having the best player in the series gives you some doubt of like, okay, sometimes that's what it comes down to is like your best versus our best. Who's better? So that gives you doubt. And then Porzingis' health is the other thing that he was just like, that's a guy that's historically gotten hurt a lot. And when you don't have a lot of depth behind that and you're relying a lot on him, and he's been kind of a big impact player for them this season, a guy that took them from really good to like title favorites. That's a little scary when you're relying on him to stay healthy to really lift your title odds, that much. So, I'm not saying they can't win the title, but I still would pick a couple teams out west. You trust Joe Mazzulla? I don't trust Joe Mazzulla.
No.
Late game offense, I don't trust
Absolutely
the late
not.
game.
No.
I think,
No.
again, I think in the middle of the game, like they're fine, and I'm not saying he sucks all the time, but it's like I don't trust in the last 5-6 minutes of a close game in the playoffs that Celtics offense is going to look sharp.
If it's Mazzulla
many times.
against Tibbs late, I'll go with Tibbs every day of the week. There's no question.
And we've seen it again. That's many times when they lost games this year. It'd be because their crunch time offense just sucked, and they would just go to this ISO ball. And again, they don't get to the rim enough. They're not, which is hard to like win that way in the playoffs when you're just relying on chucking threes. And it's like you can't get to the rim. The Bucks had that problem when they lost Giannis. We didn't have guys that could get to the rim. It was like Chris gets to the mid range area, Dame gets to the rim sometimes. Nobody else can get to the rim, and so not having that and going to a lot of ISO ball and a lot of jump shots from Tatum and Brown, contested mid ranges and stuff like that late in close games. Like I don't trust that they're always going to get good looks. Mazzulla can really just be weird with his timeouts too sometimes. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with them and with Porzingis out, if this really could become a series and if they could, potentially fall behind in this series and really put the pressure on them.
All right, take a quick time out. Come back. We'll talk about the Knicks and Pacers and what happened there on Wednesday night. Next on the Green and Growing podcast, download it on your Odyssey app or if you download your favorite podcast app. Check us out on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page as well. That's where we live stream these bad boys. Steve Sparky Fifer from Wisconsin Sports Daily, weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 on 1250 AM The Fan. You can also stream it on your Odyssey app. He is Nathan Marzion. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. Hey, it's Sparky Fifer, 1250 AM The Fan, along with my guy Nathan Marzion. Follow me on Twitter at Sparky Radio. Follow him at Nathan Marzion. Download the Green and Growing podcast right there on your Odyssey app or if you download your favorite podcast app. Talking about the madness in the NBA playoffs. We talked about the Celtics losing to Cleveland in Game 2 in the last segment. Now let's focus on what happened on Knicks Pacers in that Game 2, on that one at the Garden. Against the Pacers and the Knicks. The Knicks now up 2-0 in that series. And look, man, we were talking earlier about, not regretting Grayson Allen, not regretting Drew Holiday. You regret Dante DiVincenzo getting away, Nathan Marzion?
Look, that one, obviously, yes, based on what's transpired. But it's hard for me to look back and be mad at Horst for that because number one, at the time it was a fine move. It was like we don't need him. We have guard defenders. We have guys that him and Pat Connaughton were very interchangeable, and we literally had just went on a whole playoff title run without Dante. And so it was kind of like we don't need him. We need front court depth. We went out and traded for Serge Ibaka. It also resulted in us getting what is now the 33rd pick this season. And so it didn't seem like a bad move. Also, we didn't know we were going to have Damian Lillard and need guard defenders later down the road. Like, obviously now you're like, man, I wish we had a player like that, a shooting guard that we need. But it's like we didn't really need that at the time. And then number 3 is he went to 2 other teams before going to the Knicks that also kind of watched him play for a little bit and said, we're good. You can go elsewhere. So it's not like we were the only team that gave up on him or only team that missed on him. It just feels like he hadn't found his groove. And then he finally did with New York. And that's great for him. I'm glad he found a place where he can thrive. And he, has gotten a lot better over the years and really, really started to develop his game. So good for him. I mean, he never was a terrible player with us. Like he always was fine, solid. But for him to now be a legitimate, role, like starting level player with the Knicks in the playoffs and a guy that's contributing nightly is good to see. I've always liked Dante, and it's good to again just see him find a place where he's really thriving.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't regret it either. Okay, so Brunson, Hart, and DiVincenzo, the Villanova 3, as they like to call him, doing their thing. Brunson had some Chris Middleton Karate Kid stuff go on there. He disappears for the second quarter. They rub their hands together, fix whatever's wrong with him, send him back out there. He plays the whole second half like he never got hurt and missed the whole second quarter. He's playing at a completely different level. Now, I've said it before. I'll say it again. I was dead wrong on Brunson. When they gave him that money in New York, I laughed and said, what are you all doing? And you're hiring his dad. How sweet is that? But you're nuts. Like, you should have stayed in Dallas where you were set up to really be in a good situation. Now weight of the world is on your shoulders, and you got to go play like a superstar with the money they gave you. That's probably not going to happen. I was wrong. This dude is showing out on a nightly basis right now and carrying this team. And he has elevated his status, I think, within the league, Nathan. And if they win this and they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, there's no question he's moving himself up the rung of really good players in this league by his performance.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy, like just to see him go from, 10 to 15 point per game guy to now all of a sudden he jumps to 25. Now he jumps near 30. And it's like, holy cow, like he is now a superstar. And he struggled the first 2 games in that Sixers series. But since then, I mean, 39, 47, 40, 41, 43, 29. So he's been awesome.
He missed the second quarter of the 29 game last night. Right.
Yeah, exactly. He would have probably had 35 or something like that, maybe even more. So he's been on a tear, and I never hated the move from them, but I always was like, it's just another good player that they're gonna have. It's not a star. It's not someone that can lead their team. And again, not many. I think 99% of the population agreed with me on that and was like, he's not a star player. He's a good player, but he's not a star. Again, when they signed him, he had just come off averaging 16 points a game. You know, it was like, hey, he's good, but he's not. Again, he's not leading you to anything. But he's been awesome, and I think, yeah, I think right now, I mean, he's in the top 10 as of now. I mean, and he could go into pushing like top 6 or 7. But it's pretty crazy, you know, again, considering like if you had told someone 2, 3 years ago Brunson's a top 10 NBA player, they'd sound insane. So props to him.
Other insanity in this series is Hart playing 48 minutes a game, playing 53 minutes in an overtime game. He's going to get hurt. I'm just telling you, I hope I'm wrong. Man's going to get hurt. And it's going to be on Thibodeau's hands for getting that man hurt and playing this way. So I'm 1,000% against the way he's doing this. It's working. I'm not sure how Hart is still functioning. He is. I said this on Wisconsin Sports Daily. You go back and look. Jordan, Magic, Bird, they didn't do this crazy crap that Thibodeau's having these kids do. None of this stuff was happening back in the day, even when they were tough guys back then. Those guys that everybody now hates because they talk about how much harder it was, none of those guys were doing what Thibodeau's asking these guys to do. If Brunson doesn't get hurt, Brunson would have been around 44 minutes like DiVincenzo in that game. Hart's playing 48. Thibodeau's lost his damn mind. Smart dude, but one of these kids are going to get hurt, and that's going to be the end of this run, and it's going to be over. And you can't tell me you can't survive for 5 minutes combined total in 4 quarters without Jason Hart on the floor, that all hell's going to break loose and you're going to lose every game. Like, I don't buy that at all. It's a literal suicide mission right now that Hart is out there running. I mean, props to him for doing it, because I'm not sure many guys could handle what he's going through. And then you lose Anunoby, and they ask Hart after the game, so, what's it mean to you? He's like, it don't mean nothing to me. I'm playing 48 minutes already. It doesn't affect my minutes whatsoever. I'm already out here. So it doesn't mean anything. Now, losing Anunoby is a big deal. He's not playing game 3. They already ruled him out for game 3. So that'll help the Pacers. I don't know. What do you make of all the minutes these guys are playing, Nathan?
It's very wild. I'm just looking at one of the games, like that game 6 against Philly. Brunson played 44, Hart played 46, Dante played 48, and OG Anunoby played 45. So it was like those guys played almost every minute together. And that's, they've been playing 40 plus minutes, most of these guys, pretty consistently. So it's wild. I agree that probably at some point it's going to take a toll. I mean, and it's not like these guys had a ton of rest during the season. Josh Hart played 81 games. Like, this isn't like he took games off and they said, we're going to want you to play 48 minutes in the playoffs. Like, he played every game this year pretty much. And, at some point, yeah, I know Anunoby just got hurt, which, I mean, it sounds like it's not too long-term, but it feels like that stuff might come up where they just miss games here and there. And it could be something that costs them their season if you're playing against a team like Boston, where you can't really afford to have a game without Brunson or a game without Anunoby's been super important for them. Like, you look at his on-off numbers, it's absolutely insane. So it'll be interesting, but I mean, the way it's going right now, I mean, it's obviously working for them, that they're winning games, they're winning series, they're getting by teams, but I don't know if it's something sustainable.
One other thing, I talk about Indiana, Carlisle. I'm sick of talking about the penalties, all that. 2 quick things on that. One, this has been going on for 100 years in the NBA. The guys complain about calls. The next game, they get the calls. Now, if they don't get calls in game 3, then we got something. But what he's doing, the small market thing, they got everybody up in arms. Go back, listen to Wisconsin Sports Daily. Go to 1250amthefan.com or your Odyssey app. I did an interview with Michael Freer, who is part of that 48 Minutes podcast we've had guys on from. And he's a Knicks fan. And him and I went back and forth about that term, small market versus big market. And I thought it was a pretty entertaining interview. So if you want to get my take on that, go back. I don't want to waste everybody's time doing it here as well. But I do want to say this. As I went at Al Horford earlier in this podcast, do you know what made my heart feel real good last night, Nathan Marzion? Miles Turner turned back into a pumpkin last night. Back into a pumpkin. Being horrible offensively last night. A pumpkin. And if that dude don't step up, just like if Al Horford don't step up, they're dead. It's over. Miles Turner has to play like Cinderella like he was in the Milwaukee series, because if he don't, bye-bye, all done, Indiana Pacers. And that'll make my heart feel good to send Halliburton home, who, by the way, had a good last game. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I definitely enjoy seeing the Pacers lose right now. And Knicks are a team that I do want to see make a little run, because I don't mind them. But yeah, the whole foul thing is stupid to me, because I'm like, if you watch a full game of of stuff, you're gonna find missed calls for both teams. Like you can point out probably 20 to 30 missed calls for every single team in every game, like that you could ticky tack call and say, well, that's technically a foul. It's the playoffs, man. Like you let some stuff go. They let guys be physical a little bit. There might be stuff that technically by the rule book is a foul, but they're not gonna call that. Like that's not realistic to expect them to call every one of those. So when they come out with we have 78 calls that should have, it's like, give me a break, man. Like I can guarantee you 60 to 65 of those are super ticky tack that you're like, they're not calling that in the playoffs. And there might be some that are, okay, they really missed that call, but that happens every game. This isn't, there were some very unfortunate ones down the stretch of game one. Yes. Did they get robbed a little bit? Yes. But I'm not going to act like this is it's totally rigged for the Knicks. They had leads in those games. They could have held on to those leads and they didn't. Um, I hate when losing teams blame the refs all the time. Like I very rarely do it. And even when I do, I'm like, I'm not going to act like the refs lost us this game, but there are some bad calls. But to act like, to go into your press conference and basically just be like, oh, it was all the refs. Like, come on.
Now we'll see if it works. We'll see if game 3 they get some calls. The crazy part about it is you go look at that box score. Free throws were relatively the same. Pacers stunk at the free throw line again. That's part of the reason you lost. And fouls on both teams were relatively close. It wasn't like the Knicks had 35 free throw attempts and Indiana had 3. Like then, okay, clearly there's something that ain't right. Fine, I get down. But in that game, it was relatively close in that game. All right, take a quick time out. Come back. I want to talk about one more thing, and that's just Mike Budenholzer looking like he's coming back to the NBA. And his assistant, Charles Lee, leaving the Celtics. He's got a new job, too. We'll talk about that next here on Green and Growing. Download on your Odyssey app or if you download your favorite podcast app. And, of course, check us out on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page. Hey, it's Sparky Fifer, Wisconsin Sports Daily, weekday afternoons, 2 to 5 on 1250 a.m. The Fan. Follow me on Twitter at Sparky Radio. He is Nathan Marzion at Nathan Marzion as we do Green and Growing. Record these bad boys Monday and Thursday nights for your listening pleasure. They usually get uploaded Tuesday and Friday mornings before you wake up. Nathan Marzion, let's talk about the two look-to-be hires. Lee from Boston, Charles Lee, the old Bud assistant, leaving Boston and Joe Mazzulla after this whole thing is done to go coach the Charlotte Hornets and LaMelo Ball. Your thoughts on that job and the job ahead for Charles Lee?
Not the best job considering their history, considering they don't have a ton of young talent. They have a little bit, but it's not a super exciting job, but good for him, man. I mean, he was been a great assistant coach for a long time, so I'm excited for him that he has now the opportunity to be a head coach. And even when he was with the Bucks, this was something you were kind of worried about every year. Yep. Was like, is he going to get poached for a head coaching job? So, I mean, it's very rare a guy's going to get his first head coaching job in like the perfect scenario, have a team that's really good and is a playoff type of team. So it's not like it's the end of the world that it's the Hornets, but good for him. Good for him. I'm very happy for him.
Not everybody can be blessed like Adrian Griffin and screw it up. Let's talk about the Phoenix Suns, because it looks like they're hiring Mike Budenholzer, who is hustling to put together a staff. But think about it. I mean, a lot of his guys are gone. Taylor Jenkins is coaching the Grizzlies. Lee's over there. He's going to go coaching the Hornets. So a lot of his guys that were with him, now Darvin Ham just got fired. So he could bring Darvin Ham with him to Phoenix. That obviously would make sense to be he's the lead assistant. He's got to find some other guys to go with him. Do we like Budenholzer with KD, disrespectful Bradley Beal, and poor Devin Booker stuck in the middle of all that happy crap out in Phoenix?
I don't know. I don't love it, because to me, Budenholzer is a coach that takes bad to average teams and makes them good or great, but he's not a guy that takes a good/great team and makes them a championship team, in my opinion. Now, he won us a championship. I'm not trying to disrespect him with that, but we were already, when he took over, we were basically, we were on the rise, becoming a really, really good team. And it's not like us winning a championship was a result of him, his masterful coaching or anything. It was like, okay, largely because of Giannis's play. And, there were several times we could have lost in that playoffs because of Bud.
Well, he transformed Brook, though. You give him credit for that.
Yes. But I just like there's several playoff runs where we failed largely because of Bud. So it's like I just don't think he's someone that you can rely on to take a great team and win them titles. So that to me, he's better off taking a team that's again middle of the pack or even a little bit worse and making them like he could really give them some structure and give them a floor that they wouldn't have before. But it's like the Suns are looking to reach their ceiling. The Suns are looking to go from a floor team to a ceiling team. And I don't think Bud's necessarily the coach for that, but maybe he'll prove me wrong. I think he's a good coach. I just don't think he's like they're not trying to win regular season games. They're trying to win a title. And I don't know if he's the right guy for that.
Come on now. Wouldn't you want to be there when KD and Bud have their first conversation? Wouldn't that be fun? Don't you think KD's going to be like, man, aren't you happy my shoes are too big for my feet? Come on, coach. Be honest. You're happy because if my shoes actually fit my feet, y'all wouldn't have been in the championship. Y'all wouldn't have won a championship. Don't you think KD gives him a whole bunch of crap throughout this process and Bud gives it right back? I mean, you couldn't. If I'm Budenholzer, I'm just laughing when they're calling me like, "Hey, would you be interested in coming coaching KD and the Suns?" You'd be like, "Kevin Durant, that guy? You got to be kidding me!" I mean, he had Giannis, and now he gets KD, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. You could argue that big three is more talented than the big three he had when it was Holiday, Middleton, and Giannis. For certain, it's a more talented big three. So the problem he has in Phoenix is what? He's got to find a real point guard. He don't have one. And that reared its ugly head this year. And you and I both talked about that at the beginning of the year, how that could be a problem. And it was a problem for Phoenix.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, it's a lot of talent. I think it's different personalities. Not that they're polar opposites, but I think there's definitely a little more friction and a little bit more drama and stuff between the Suns' big three than there was with the Bucks. Beal's got his injury stuff. KD has never been totally immune from drama, and I think Booker can be a little bit of a diva sometimes. So like, there's stuff to work out there. It'll also be interesting to see, like when he was with the Bucks, again, their philosophy was a lot of threes and rim stuff. It was like eliminate most of the mid range. And that's what the Suns do is mid range. Like they thrive on contested mid range shots. And I wonder if how Bud's going to handle it. And if he's going to be like, you know what, I got to completely kind of run something different than I'm used to and let these guys play to their strengths and do their mid range stuff, even if it might be against what I believe is best. This is what they do best. And, I've always thought that big three won't win a title because in part because of that, because the way they play is not ideal in the year 2024 with shooting contested mid-range shots all the time. And you can't really ask them to change that. Like I'm not going to ask those guys to all just shoot threes because they're not as good at the threes as they are at the mid-range shots or getting to the rim. So I don't know. It'll be very interesting. It's a weird fit to me. And if I'm guessing, I would think that they're going to be, similarly like a good regular season team and then lose in the first or second round like they did this past season. That would be my guess as to how next season goes for them.
Be very weird if it's the Bucks and Suns in the finals next year and Bud is coaching the Suns, KD is on the Suns. I mean, you want to talk about surreal crap for Giannis and Chris Middleton having to go through that. That would be just nuts is what that would be. And I don't think it's that far out of the realm of possibility. If everybody stays healthy and plays up to, the back of their basketball card or whatever you want to call it, it very well could be those two next year. But again, the biggest thing, especially for Milwaukee, is can Giannis actually stay healthy in the playoffs to be able to get him to that point, and Middleton from that perspective as well. He is Nathan Marzion. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. Follow me at Sparky Radio. Download the Green and Growing podcast on your Odyssey app, wherever you download your favorite podcast at. Thanks for tuning us in here, and enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good one. Toodles.